Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. You are audible and also screen is visible.
Okay. We'll start with the asymptotic notation. Basically, this topic. Okay. Okay. I'll start my session now. So we will talk about the asymptotic notation, what is asymptotic analysis, what is the complexity of the algorithm, how the notations are given, likewise. So very first question to me, very first question to all the student is, how can you measure the efficiency of the algorithm? How can you say that a particular algorithm is better than the second option of the algorithm?
Depending on the
Basically,
complexity.
we judge the algorithm based on two criteria. One is the space complexity of the algorithm, and second criteria is the time complexity of the algorithm. What is the space complexity of the algorithm? The amount of space that algorithm take for the execution of algorithm. If you find any other number which is greater than the time complexity of the algorithm, the amount of space that algorithm take for the execution is the space complexity. Whereas what is the time complexity of the algorithm? The time complexity of the algorithm is nothing but the amount of time required for the execution of algorithm. So I'm talking algorithm. So what is basically algorithm is? Algorithm is nothing to write the steps to find out the, you will frame out some consider it as the greatest number, then you will start or you will go on comparing that greatest number with the other number. If you find any other number which is greater than the current, try to find out the greatest number. It is a rough problem is given to working in C. You will have to write down all the steps that are executable in C construct. Okay, and for writing the program you require certain data structure. Without data structure you cannot write a high level of program. So what is algorithmic problem? You are given some specific input, you have to apply the algorithm, and after application of algorithm you will get the certain amount of output. How will you judge your algorithm? Once you frame your algorithm, how can you judge your algorithm? How can you say that your algorithm is working fine? It depends on the number of input that you supply to your algorithm. It depends on the number of input that you give to your algorithm. Now, how can you say that your algorithm is very better than the other algorithm? You can say that your algorithm is better if you analyze your algorithm based on the different input. You will give a smaller input, then you will give larger input, then you will give medium number of input. And after each input, you will analyze the algorithm how it is working, whether it is working very efficiently, or it is working in worst case, or it is working in average case. This is the case, yeah, that you are doing. So this is known as the analysis of algorithm. This is nothing but the analysis of algorithm. So what is algorithmic problem? You give specific input, and for that input you apply some logic, and as an output you get the function. And to analyze the thing, what you do, you give finite numbers as input and you check out the output. This is the algorithmic problem. Then what is the solution? After getting the problem solution, you analyze it. It may happen that one algorithm gives you the output in n time, another algorithm is giving you the output in n square time, some other algorithm is giving you the output in 2 raised to power n time. Once you are getting the output, all the algorithms are giving the correct output, but after that you analyze that algorithm, ki which algorithm is better one. If you compare the algorithm that is executing in n amount of time, you will consider that it is a better algorithm as compared to the algorithm that is giving you the output in n square amount of time, because n is naturally smaller as compared to the n square. So all these things are nothing but the criteria for a good algorithm. So how can you define a good algorithm? A good algorithm is nothing but algorithm which is efficient. How can I say or how can I measure the efficiency of the algorithm? You can measure the efficiency of the algorithm in terms of running time as well as the space being used. Efficiency is nothing but the function of input size. How can you measure the efficiency? It depends on the input size. That is, number of input you are giving for your algorithm and the time the algorithm is taking to give the output. This gives you the efficiency of the algorithm. Let us consider how to measure the, we'll see how to measure the running time of the algorithm. If you are having some algorithm and you are asked to measure the algorithm, in normal strategy, what you will do? You will supply different types of input to it. For example, if give you two algorithm to sort the n numbers, to sort and list of n numbers. So what you will do? First, you will give two number to the algorithm. After that, you will give five number to the algorithm. After that, you will give 10 number to the algorithm. Then you will supply 50 number. Then you will supply 100 number. Then you will supply 1000 number to the algorithm, and you will check the running time of the algorithm. This was the earlier method of calculating the efficiency of algorithm. You have to supply different number of input and you have to find out the what is the execution time to get the output. And finally you get the graph of that input time, input versus the time required, and according to that graph, the algorithm were analyzed. But this is not the better method. It is not possible to calculate the efficiency of algorithm based on this strategy. Because if you start calculating the efficiency of the algorithm as per the measuring technique, you will require large amount of time. Most of your time will be wasted on measuring the efficiency of the algorithm. So this is not the correct way for the execution. Now, what are the limitation to determine the running time? Every time you will have to give the input, every time you have to collect the output, and every time you have to check the running time. Then you will have to manually plot the graph. Second limitation of this experimental study is that it can be done on limited set of input. You will give one input, you will give two, you will give three, you will give 10 input, 50 input, 100 input, that's it. It means your working of algorithm, we are testing on the limited number of input. Sometimes it may happen that one of the input we are missing and that input is giving me some other other result. So that other result cannot be judged using this experimental method. In order to compare two algorithms, same hardware and software environment are needed. If you are having two algorithms and suppose I ask you to compare two algorithms, what you will have to do? You'll have to place or you'll have to save those algorithms on two different computers, and on two different computers you'll have to test the running time, but the experimental method. Hence, to avoid this experimental method, another technique of calculating the time was developed, and that is known as the asymptotic notation. For the asymptotic notation analysis, what are the primitive operations that are to be performed? How can we analyze the algorithm? The primitive operations are low-level operation independent of the programming language and can be identified in the pseudocode. For example, some assignment statement is there. A is equal to B. So we will say the time required for this operation is 1 unit. Then control statement. If there is for loop, for I is equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, then the time required for the execution of this is n. Likewise, we consider some primitive operation for calculation of the time of the algorithm. Let us consider the algorithm of sorting. For example, suppose you are playing the card. Cards are randomly given to you and you are asked to arrange all those cards in order. So what you will do? You will first analyze the card. For example, the cards given to you are card of 2, card of 5, card of 4, card of 10, card of 7, likewise. So what should be the output? When you swap them, I should get the output as first I should get card of 2, then 4, then 5, then 7, and then 10. Then only I will say that my cards are in order. So what is to be done? In middle, I'll have to apply the logic of sorting. In middle, I'll have to apply the logic of sorting. And how can I check the correctness of that logic? I can check the correctness of the logic on the basis of comparison. What I will do? I will compare whether my output B1 to B1 follows the order as B1 is lesser than B2, which is lesser than B3, which is lesser than B4, likewise, which is lesser than Bn. If any of the combination is wrong, then again I have to recheck it. Okay. Now, if I apply this algorithm, what will be the time of execution or what will be the complexity of the algorithm? It will depends on the number of elements. Suppose I am having only two cards. In two cards, I'll have to just swap two, or I'll have to check just two cards whether first card is greater or second card is greater, and I can do the comparison very easily and sort it out. But if I am having 52 cards, then the task become little bit difficult. I'll have to apply certain permutations to get the cards sorted. Second, the criteria is how partially sorted they are. Sometimes it may happen that the cards that you are getting, they are half sorted and half unsorted. So complexity of the algorithm depends on that also. If 50% of your cards are sorted and 50% are not sorted, then your job is little bit easier as compared to unsorted, complete unsorted list. And further, the running time is also dependent on the algorithm that you are applying. Now for this, suppose I want to apply the insertion sort. What happen in case of insertion sort? In insertion sort, you consider the element. For example, you will consider the element 4. You will consider this element 4 and you will compare this element 4 with the previous element. You will compare this element 4 with the previous element and you place this number 4 at its proper position. You will place this element 4 to its proper position. After placing the element to its proper position, your sequence will be 2, 4 and 5. In next iteration, you will consider the next element, that is 10, and then you will try to put the element 10 to its proper position. It means you will compare this 10 with all the previous element, that is 2, 4, 5. And if you find that the position of 10 is itself is correct position, you will move ahead. Then you will compare the next element, that is 7, with the previous least. And you will place the 7 after 2, 4, 5, and after that you will place the 7. In this way, the insertion sort is operated. Let us take an example. Suppose you are given the elements. If you are given the elements and all the elements are stored in array A. Now look at the elements. The elements are 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, 7, 2, 5, 1. If you analyze this list is half sorted and half unsorted. The element up to 9 all are sorted, whereas the element beyond 9 are sorted list as it is. So up to 9 I won't make any change. After that the next element is 7. I'll compare the element 7 with the previous list and I'll place the element to its proper position. For example, I'll compare 7 with 9. 9 is greater. I'll move ahead. I'll compare 7 with 8. 8 is also greater. Then I'll compare 6 with 6. 6 is smaller. So I will place this 7 in between 6 and 8. Okay, this is the insertion sort. After that, in next pass, I will consider next element as 2 and then I'll start comparing with it the previous list and I'll place it to its proper position. So what is the strategy applied? Start empty-handed, insert the card in the right position of already sorted hand, then continue until all the cards are sorted or inserted. Now, what is the input to this algorithm? Input to this algorithm is nothing but the array of integer. Input to this algorithm is nothing but the array of integer. And what will be the output for this algorithm? The output is nothing but the sorted list. Sorted list means The element will be arranged like this. A of 0 is smaller than or equal to A of 1, which is smaller than or equal to A of 2, which is smaller than or equal to A of 3. Likewise, it will go up to A of n minus 1. This is the task. Now, how the algorithm works? The algorithm works like this. If I want to create the algorithm, I'll consider the first element. I'll start with the first list. In the first list, there will be only one element, and I'll compare that element with itself, so it is at its proper position. After that, I will split the list into two parts. First sorted, then second element is compared with first position. Then in third pass, third element is compared with previous two. Likewise, the algorithm goes. Okay. So the algorithm works like this. For j is equal to 1 to n minus 1, I will consider the element as key element. Every element as key element for each pass. This is the outer for loop. So first time I will consider 3 as the key element. In next pass, I will consider 4 as the key element, then compare with 3. In next pass, I will consider 6 as the key element and I will compare with previous 2. In next pass, I'll consider 8 as the key element and then I will compare it with previous 3. In next pass, I will consider 9 as the key element, then I'll compare with previous 4 element. Likewise, we go. So for that, I am applying one for loop. So my for loop will go like this. J is equal to 1 to n minus 1, do key is equal to A of j. After considering any element as a key element, what to then do next? For example, if my 7 is my key element, if 7 element is my key element, then what to do with the 7? We have to place this 7 to its proper position. We have to place the 7 to its proper position. It means if this one is my key element, then I have to compare this key element with the remaining element. I'll have to compare this 7 with the remaining element. Let us assume that this element 7 is present at position J. If the element 7 is present at position J, so I will compare this jth element up to this 1 to 9, this third to 9. So if I consider this as the 1, and then this last position will be j minus 1. If the position of 7 is j, then a element lesser than this one will be the j minus 1. So I will assign I is equal to j minus 1. It means your I will go from first element to j minus 1 element. And to that list, I will place the element j to the proper position. So for that, placing an element to its proper position, I'll use the while loop. And what will be the condition for this while loop? Two condition I will specify. One, value of I should always be greater than 0. And then A of I should be greater than the key value. A of I should be the greater than key value. Until you get the greater number, you will go on moving to the previous position. What logic we are applying? We are comparing this 7 with the 9. It is greater 1, skip it. Then I'll compare with 8. It is greater 1, skip it. Then I'll compare with 6. It is smaller, so I'll stop. This logic I will have to apply. So for that, what I'll do? I'll write I is equal to j minus 1, so that my list will go from 1 to I only. And then while I is greater than 0 and A of I is greater than key, what we have to do? We have to skip the element. How to skip the element? Just I will write A of I plus 1 is equal to A of I, so that I will move in a reverse direction. And if I reach at a position where the element to be inserted, for example, if this condition is false, I will be at this position 6. When this comparison will be false, I'll compare 7 with 9. It will be skipped. Then I will be comparing this 7 with the 8. Again, the steps are skipped. Then I'll compare 7 with 6. Now the condition is false. While loop is false. What I'll have to do at this position? If I am coming at this position, I am comparing A of I with the key elements. What I will have to do? I'll have to place the element 7 after 6. So for placing this, I'll have to write A plus I is equal to key. So the element is placed at its proper position. So this is the normal algorithm for the insertion sort. Now, how to calculate the complexity of this algorithm? Let us calculate the complexity of the algorithm. So, what was your first step? Your first step is for j is equal to 1 to n minus 1, do e is equal to a of j. Then, for what we are doing? Insert a of j into the sorted sequence. For what purpose we are performing all these steps? Just we have to insert the jth element to its proper position in the sequence a of j minus 1. So for that, you are applying or you are using one more iterative variable I, and how I can be analyzed or initialized, it can be initialized as I is equal to j minus 1. And after that, you'll have to apply the loop specifying two conditions. Value of I should be greater than 0. It means you should not reach to the end of the list, and your key value should always be lesser than the a of I. Then what you will do, you will shift every element to the next position, that is a of I plus 1 is equal to a of I. For example, by this statement a of I plus 1 is equal to a of I, you will shift 9 to here. You will shift 9 to here. A of I plus 1, if this position is a of I plus 1 will be this position. So by this statement a of I plus 1 is equal to a of I, you are shifting 9 to this position, 8 to this position. Then 6, when you compare with 6, the condition is false. So it will come out of the loop, and then you are writing a of I plus 1. If this is I, this position will be a of I plus 1, and there you are placing the key element. So how to calculate the complexity of this algorithm, or how to analyze the complexity or total time taken by this algorithm? For example, first statement for j is equal to 1 to j minus 1. How many times this algorithm will be, this statement will be executed? We are starting the statement execution at j is equal to 1, and you are terminating, that is terminating condition is n minus 1. So when the value of j becomes n minus 1, its body, the body of for loop will be executed. After that, value of n is incremented and value of n becomes n minus 1, value of j will become n. As soon as the value of j becomes n, condition is false. So its body won't be executed. Student, pay attention how the statement is calculated. For this statement, for j is equal to 1 to n minus 1, how many times this loop will be executed? This loop will be executed from j is equal to 1 to n minus 1 time, that is n minus 1 time. But what will happen after that value of j becomes n minus 1? The statements are executed and the value of j is incremented to n, and condition is checked, and that time condition is false, hence the body won't be executed. Hence this statement will be executed for n number of time. This statement is executed for n number of time. Let us consider that for one execution, for the single execution of this statement, you require C1 amount of time. Assume that for one iteration, for one execution of the statement, you require C1 amount of time, and total number of iterations are n. So you will calculate the time required for the complete execution of this statement will be C1 into n. For one execution, for one pass, you require the time is equal to C1. How many passes are there? How many times this statement will be executed? For n number of times. So what will be the total time taken by the execution of this statement? It will be C into n. If this statement will be executed for n number of time, what about the body of the statement? Body will be executed for n minus 1 amount of time. Why it is so? Because when the value of j becomes n, condition is false, and if the condition is false, the cursor will come out of the loop. It won't execute the body of that for loop. Hence, the remaining statement of the body of the for loop, they will be executed for n minus 1 amount of time. So this statement key is equal to a of j. This will be executed for n minus 1 amount of time. For the single execution of this statement, key is equal to a of j. Let us assume that you require C2 amount of time. And how many times this statement is executed? This statement is executed for n minus 1 amount of time. So what will be the total time taken by this statement for the execution? The total time will be equal to C2 multiplied by n minus 1. The total time will be equal to C2 multiplied by n minus 1. Next statement is a comment statement. So for the comment statement, as it is not executing, no machine cycle, no CPU cycle will be there for the execution. Hence, the cost of the execution will be zero. The cost of the execution will be zero, because being a comment statement, it is non-executable statement. So if it is a non-executable statement, no CPU cycle is executed for the execution of this statement. Hence, the constant value is zero. This statement will also be executed for n minus 1 time, but this statement will be iterated. Rather, instead of saying executed, I should say this statement will be iterated for n minus 1 time, but for each iteration, the time required is zero. So what will be the total amount of time? The total amount of time required will be equal to 0 into n minus 1, that is 0. That's why we say the non-executable statement, that is comment statement, has time complexity is equal to 0. Your next statement is I is equal to j minus 1. Now this I is equal to j minus 1 is also the part of this for loop. So this will also be executed for n minus 1 time. If for single execution it requires C2 amount of time, so the total time required for the execution will be C3 into n minus 1. After that, next is the while loop. What happened in the while loop? In the while loop, we are imposing one condition, that we are imposing two conditions rather. Value of I should be greater than 0, and second, value of key should be less than A of I. So for the execution of this statement, I'll have to calculate the complexity. Suppose assume that this statement is executed. For the single execution of this statement, you require tj amount of time. For a single statement, if you require tj amount of time, or I can say for the single iteration, you require tj times. For the single iteration of outer loop, the inner loop is executed for tj. So for how many time tj will be executed? The tj will be executed from starting j is equal to 1 to j is equal to n minus 1. This statement will be executed for j is equal to 1 to j is equal to n minus 1, because this is nested under the for. This while statement is nested under the for. Hence, this statement will be executed for n minus 1 amount of time. This statement will be executed for n minus 1 amount of time. So, we can calculate the complexity, or we can calculate the time taken for the execution as Tj, where j varies from j is equal to 1 to j is equal to n minus 1. And then under this while loop, there are two statements. One is a of I plus 1 is equal to a of I and I minus 1. If this statement is executed for tj times, so the body of that statement will be executed for tj minus 1 time. Same is the case with this. If the for loop is executed for n number of times, its body will be executed for n minus 1 number of times. Similarly, if the while loop is executed for tj amount of time, its body will be executed for tj minus 1 amount of time. And final statement is out of the while loop, that is a of I plus 1 is equal to key. So it will be executed for n minus 1 time. Now, if you are asked to calculate the total cost, how you will calculate the total cost of this algorithm? You will calculate the total cost of the algorithm as C1 into n plus C2 into n minus 1 plus 0 into n minus 1 plus C3 into n minus 1 plus C4 into Tj, where j varies from 1 to n minus 1, plus C5 into Tj minus 1, where j varies from 1 to n minus 1, plus C6 into Tj minus 1, where j varies from 1 to n minus 1, plus C7 into n minus 1. This will be the total time taken by the algorithm. So if I rearrange the term of this algorithm, I will get the total time as n into C1 plus C2 plus C3 plus C7 plus j varies from 1 to n minus 1 tj into C4, C5, C6 minus C2, C3, C5, C6, C7. This is the time complexity, or the total time taken by the algorithm. But can you say that this is worthwhile, or can you remember this complexity or this analysis for each algorithm? No. So what we will do? We will consider the three cases for the execution time. One is the base case, second is the worst case, and third one is the average case. For three cases, we will analyze this algorithm: base case, worst case, and the average case. Now, what is base case? Base case is the case where the list is already sorted. Yeah, if your list is already sorted, then we consider that case as the base case. Why should we consider this case as the base case? Because if your list is already sorted, in that case, your inner loop, this loop won't be executed. ये loop आपका कभी execute ही नहीं होगा because list is already sorted. यहाँ से यहाँ तक चला जाएगा and your list is sorted, इसलिए ये swapping कभी भी नहीं होगा. Okay, and if the inner loop is not executed, so if the time of tj will be equal to 1, execution time of tj is equal to 1, and if the execution time is 1, it means the whole thing is 1. Here whole thing is 1 1 1 1, and that is c2 into c4 into 1, c5 into 1, c6 into 1. If this is 1, then what will be the overall complexity of the algorithm? Overall complexity of the algorithm will be in the range of n only. It will be in the range of n only. And if the algorithm is executed in n amount of time, or order of n, then we call that algorithm as a linear algorithm, linear time algorithm. The execution time is linear time. So the running time will be fn. Why? Because your tj is 1. If your tj is 1, then the whole thing will be the constant value. This is a constant value. This one is a constant value. These are also constant. So what is the variable here? Variable is n. So what will be the function of this execution time? The function will be equal to f of n. And f of n is considered as the linear time. Second condition is the worst condition. Now what happens in case of worst condition? Worst condition means that for every element you have to perform the operation. For each element is unsorted, and for every element you have to perform the operation. What happens in that case? In that case, this tj will be also executed for n minus 1 amount of time. Tj will be also executed in n minus 1 amount of time. So what happens to the complexity of the algorithm? The complexity of the algorithm means your outer loop is executed for n number of order n, inner is also executed for order n. Outer and inner, outer is executing of order n, inner is also executing for of order n. It means the complexity will be n square. The function complexity running time will be n square. And if it is n square, we call this time complexity as the quadratic time complexity. So your running time will be equal to f of n square. Third case is the average case. What happens in case of average case? Average case means 50% of your list is sorted and 50% is not sorted. Half of the list, or half, or more than half, or lesser than half is sorted, and after that the list is not sorted. So here the operation that are to be performed, they are lesser as compared to the worst case, but they are greater as compared to the base case, and the time or running time required for the execution will be equal to f of n square, that is the quadratic time. So your analysis of the algorithm says that the algorithm insertion sort has base case running time of order n, that is function of n. Worst case, it is function of n square. Average case, it is the function of n square. So if I plot the graph for the running time by supplying different input, then I'll get some graph like this. So what will happen? Some input may be of base type, some input may be of worst type, some input may be of average type. So how to calculate the average case? The base case is the minimum time required for sorting. It will be the base case. What will be the worst case? The maximum amount of time required for sorting the element, that sequence will be the worst case. And in between base case and worst case, there will be the average case. In between base case and worst case, there will be the average case. So how will you plot this? You will plot, if I ask you to plot like linear graph, your graph will look like this: base case, average case, worst case. Okay. Now next is, what do you mean by asymptotic notation? Now this base case, worst case, average case, we call worst case, or we can say worst case is usually used. It is the upper bound of the certain application. Worst case is giving you the upper bound or the highest time required for the execution of the algorithm. Whereas average case gives you the in between or average time required for the execution. Whereas base case gives you the minimum time required for the execution. Now, for purpose, we use the notation, and that notation is known as the asymptotic notation. What is the goal of this asymptotic analysis? Goal is to specify the analysis of running time by getting the read of the details. Every time, it should not be the condition that we have to supply a certain number of input and you get the output and you analyze the thing. It should not happen. So what is the aim of your asymptotic notation? The aim of asymptotic notation is to simplify the running time of the algorithm instead of going to the detail. For example, I can say that for large number of n, if the n is above, I can say 10 lakh or so. So 10 lakh is somewhat similar to 10 lakh 1. If n is itself large, then we can ignore the minor differences between the number. So this notation is the notation which you gives you the roughly or broadly the average time required for the execution of the algorithm. Then what is the capturing? It says how the running time of the algorithm increases with the size of input in the time. Asymptotically, more efficient algorithms are based for all but small input. Asymptotically, it is said that for after certain value of n, every algorithm will work in a similar fashion, but below n, we cannot analyze the behavior of your algorithm. Now, there are three types of asymptotic notation. First, asymptotic, the big O notation. Now, what is this big O notation? Let us see. Big O notation means that suppose you want to calculate the upper bound, upper time required for the execution of the algorithm or upper time required, and suppose you want to perform the analysis regarding the upper bound, then it is counted or it is measured in terms of terminology big O. It always gives you the upper bound. Now, how this upper bound is calculated? Let us consider this graph. If your function is fn, if your function is fn, and suppose you want to calculate the upper bound of this algorithm, upper higher level complexity of the algorithm. Upper bound means worst case. Worst case, how much time will be required, that you have to calculate. So what you will do, you will plot your function. Then suppose there is another known function is there. If there exists another known function, and if I apply some constant to that function, then after certain value of n, if it is giving me the value which is always higher as compared to the fn, there exists some function gn in such a way that after certain value of n, it also function gn as the O of g of n if there exists a constant c and n0 such that n0 is lesser than or equal to n, and for every n your function fn gives you the lesser than or equal to result as compared to c into g of n. Well, how can you define a big O notation? Big O notation can be defined as if there exists some function gn in such a way that for function fn, every value of c into gn is greater than fn for all the n which are greater than n, then we call it as the asymptotic big O notation, where fn and gn are the over non-negative integer. Generally, this big O notation gives you the worst case analysis of the algorithm. For example, suppose you are having one function, let us say the name of the or the value of the function is 2n plus 6. This is the running time of some algorithm. If this is the running time of this algorithm, if I plot this against the graph, so what I will get, I am getting this plot. This is the plot of f of n, where f of n is equal to 2n plus 6. How this graph is plotted? The graph is plotted very easily. First, I will consider n is equal to 0. First, I will consider n is equal to 0. If n is equal to 0, what will be the value of function? The value of function will be 6. The value of function will be 6. It will be somewhere here. After that, I will consider value of n is equal to 1. If the value of n is equal to 1, 1 into 2, 2, 2 plus 6, 8. I'll get the value 8. After that, I'll consider value of n is equal to 3. 3 to the 6, 6 plus 6, 12. Likewise, I'll get the point and I will plot the function. Okay. After that, suppose there already exists one function gn. If there exists one function gn and this gn is equal to n, gn is equal to n, and if I apply cgn is equal to 4n, where constant if I consider as 4, if I consider constant as 4. Now how can I analyze? How can I compare this with this? How can I say that cgn is the upper bound or it is the big O notation of my function? How it is calculated? I'll put the value of n as 0. If I put the value of n as equal to 0, this is equal to 2 into 0, 0 plus 6, 6. So Fn value will be 6, whereas what will be the value of C into Gn? It will be 0 into 4, 0. So condition is false. So I will not consider that n. Then value of n is equal to 1. If I consider the value of n is equal to 1, so it will be equal to 2 into 1, 2, 2 plus 6, that is 8. And if I consider value of n is equal to 1, it will be 1 into 4, that is 4. Again, the condition is false. I will not consider that n value. Again, I will increment the value of n by 1. So if I consider n is equal to 2, 2 to the 4 plus 6, 10. And if I consider here n is equal to 2, 2 into 4, that is 8. Again, the condition is not false. Next time, I will consider the value of n is equal to 3. 3 to the 6, 6 plus 6, 12. Here 3 4s are 12. The value is equal to. And after that, if I consider n is equal to 4, it will come out to be 4 to the 8, 8 plus 6, 14, whereas 4 into 4 is equal to 16. It means at the value greater than n greater than 4, every time this function c into gn will have the higher value as compared to this value. For every function, this function will have the higher value as compared to this function. That's why I can say that the running time of this is of order n. As the running time of this is n, I can say that running time of this function is also at the order n, provided that value of n should be greater than equal to 4. The value of n should be greater than equal to 4. So this becomes the a big O notation for the function. Take another example. For example, your function is f of n square. If your function is f of n square and the gn is n, if gn is n, so cgn, if you start calculating the value, never you will get this condition. N square is lesser than equal to Cn, this condition won't be executed. It means it is not true for any of the conditions. So you cannot say that this is the correct condition. So what is the simple rule for the asymptotic notation? How to use the asymptotic notation? The simple rules are, if you are given the any expression, for example, if your running time is 50 into n into log n, then you ignore the constant. You ignore the constant term. So the asymptotic notation 50 n log n, it is considered as big O n log n. Ignore the constant, because for large value of n, constant is very lesser number, so we can ignore it. Second statement or second rule is that if your function consists of some constant value along with polynomial, some polynomial, then you consider the highest degree. For example, if your expression is 7n minus 3, if your expression is 7n minus 3, here the highest degree of n is 1. Here the highest degree of n is 1. So the running time of this or asymptotic notation for this expression will be equal to 7n minus 3, that is of order n. Next, if there is quadratic equation, so I will apply the previous two rule, that is I will ignore the constant one and I will ignore the lower terms of quadratic equation. So what are the lower terms of this quadratic equation? N and n square, these are the lower term. And what is the higher term? It will be n square log n. In n square log n there is a constant 8. I'll ignore that one. So the running time will be equal to O n square log n. Okay. In this way, the asymptotic notation is calculated for the given problem. Now, for this asymptotic notation, there are two more notation. I think we are lacking time. Second notation is big O. I'll try to cover the things. I will have to rush up. Asymptotic terminology. What are the various asymptotic terminology? Function will be logarithm. If the running time is of order log n, we call the function as logarithmic. If your function is O n, you will call that function as a linear function. If your function is of order n square, you will call that function as the quadratic function. If your function is of type O n raised to power k, n can be 3, 4, 5, anything, then you will call this function as the polynomial function. If your function is of type some constant raised to power n, 2 raised to power n, 3 raised to power n, then you will call that function as the exponential function. Always the exponential function requires largest amount of time as compared to the remaining function. If you are asked in the GATE exam, if you are asked to compare the time complexity in the increasing order of time, then if there is a exponential function, no doubt without closing eye, you can mark the exponential is having the highest complexity because it goes exponentially. Then similar to this big O notation, there are two more notation. One is the omega notation and second one is the theta notation. As big O notation gives you the higher bound, that is the worst case, the omega notation gives you the lowest bound, lowest working of your algorithm. And theta gives you the range between highest and lowest. It gives you the average between highest and lowest. Let us see the big omega notation. Omega notation, if there is a function fn, then and there exists some function gn in such a way that c into gn for some constant c into gn, for every value of n, function fn is greater than equal to c gn, then we call that notation as the asymptotic omega notation. Asymptotic omega notation. So for every value of n greater than n0, below n0 the working may be different, but for some value of n0 or all the value of n which are greater than or equal to n0, function works like that. The value of fn is always greater than or equal to c of g of n. Then the c of g of n gives you the lower bound of the function, and this is known as this is represented by the big omega notation. Third notation is theta notation. Theta notation gives you the average between upper bound and the lower bound. How can I define this function? If there exists function gn, if there exists some function gn in such a way that for the given function fn, there exists two constants c1 and c2 such that for every value of fn, this c2 into gn gives you higher value and c1 into gn gives you the lower value. The function fn, there exists one function g of n in such a way that they are having two constants c1 and c2, and they works or they follow the rules as c1 g of n is lesser than equal to f of n, which is lesser than equal to c2 of g of n. Then we call it as the theta notation. We call it as the theta notation. Fn is theta of g of n if and only if Fn is omega or big O of g of n and Fn is omega of g of n. If any function has its lower bound as well as upper bound, then only you can have the theta notation. Two more notations are there, but they are not the part of your syllabus. Let us take some questions from the gate. Before giving this, I'll explain you some of the rules that are followed by by this function. So asymptotic notation, these are the notation of running time of the algorithm in worst case, base case, or average case. So three notation. One is big theta, as I told you. Big theta of g of n can be defined as there exists some function fn in such a way that there are two constants c1 and c2, and which satisfy the condition as always value of c1 of g of n is greater than equal to 0. This value f of n is greater than equal to c of g of n, and this c2 of g of n is greater than fn for all the n which are greater than equal to 0. So your function will be equal to theta of g of n. Function fl is nothing but the theta of g of n. This is graphically shown like this. We have taken the examples also. Then there are certain rules for this, and those rules are instead of calling rule, I will call them properties. I will call them as the property. Asymptotic notation follows transitivity property. Asymptotic notation follows the transitivity property. Now, what do you mean by transitivity property? Transitivity means if any function fn is equal to theta of g of n, if any function fn is equal to theta of g of n, whereas theta of g of n is the theta of h of n, whereas this if g of n is the theta of h of n, then we can say that f of n is equal to theta of h of n. It means, what do you mean by transitivity? If any function f of n is equal to theta of g of n and g of n is equal to theta of h of n, then we can say that this function is equal to theta of h of n. This is the transitivity. This is applied in case of big O also. If any function is equal to big O notation of g of n, and if gn is equal to big O notation of h of n, then we can say that f of n is equal to big O notation of h of n. This also implies in case of omega notation, that is if f of n is equal to omega of g of n and then g of n is equal to omega of h of n, it indicates that f of n is equal to big omega of h of n. This also follows the reflexivity property. What do you mean by reflexivity property? F of n is always equal to theta of f of n. F of n is always equal to big O of f of n, and f of n is always equal to omega of f of n. It also implies the symmetry for property. What do you mean by symmetry property? If f of n is equal to theta of g of n, then we can say that g of n is also equal to theta of f of n. It is the symmetry property. It also follows the transpose property. What do you mean by transpose property? If f of n is equal to big O of g of n, then this exists if and only if g of n is big omega of f of n. If f of n is equal to big O of g of n, then g of n is equal to omega of f of n. Okay. These are the some of the properties that are there in the asymptotic notation. We will consider some of the gate questions, popular gate question. Due to the short of time, we'll run fast. Now, first question. Which of the given option provide the increasing order of asymptotic complexity for the function f1, f2, f3, f4? Now, what is function f1? F1 is nothing but the 2n. What is function f2? It is n 3 by 2. Actually, it is misprint. It should be 3 by 2 into n. f3 is n log to the base 2n, and f4 is the n log 2n. So, what will be the increasing complexity? The increasing complexity will be, the lowest complexity will be of this. That is n of log of n to the base 2. After that, next complexity will be equal to n of 3 by 2 n raised to power 3 by 2, because it is the quadratic complexity. Then comes n log 2n, and then comes this 2n. Next question. The worst running case time of the insertion sort, merge sort, quick sort are. You have to calculate the complexity of this. Now insertion sort, merge sort, quick sort are. Three sorting algorithm are there. Out of this, merge sort and quick sorts comes under divide and conquer method. Divide, and whereas insertion sort is a simple sort. But in case of worst condition, we have already seen what is the complexity of your insertion sort. Complexity of insertion sort is n square. Complexity of your insertion sort is n square. It means first answer is your wrong answer. It means there are chances of only B, C, D. Now what will be the complexity of your merge sort? Your merge sort, what happens in case of merge sort? We divide the list into two halves, then sort it. It means you require to divide the list. After that, you have to sort it, and after that, you have to merge it. Splitting and merging, both the operation are performed in case of merge sort. Hence, its complexity is n log n. Because division you require n, and for merging you require n log n. After that, there is third quick sort. And in case of worst condition, every element to be swapped. So its complexity goes as n square. So your correct answer will be, for insertion sort, you will require n square. For merge sort, you will require n log n. Whereas in case of quick sort, in worst case, you will require the n square. Next, third question. Match the algorithm with their time complexity. Now, what are the algorithms given to you? First algorithm is Tower of Hanai. Second is binary search. Third is heap sort. Fourth is addition of two numbers. And what are the complexities given? Here is of order n square. Second is n log n. Third is 2 raised to power n. And fourth is log n. Now, what will be the complexity of the exponential complexity, that is 2 raised to power n? Second is binary search. What is the complexity of this binary search? The binary search, in case of binary search, we divide the list. We divide the list and then we find out the element. We never merge the list. That's why only division is required. For the division part, you will require log n. Okay. So what is the complexity of this binary search? It will be equal to log n. Heap sort. What happens in case of heap sort? You are given the element, you insert the element into different heaps. After inserting the element to the different heaps, then you arrange the element. It means you dividing the element, you are arranging the element. Dividing it will require log n, arranging it will require n. Hence the complexity will be equal to n log n. And matrix multiplication, addition of two matrices. Simple two for loops are required for I is equal to 1 to n, for j is equal to 1 to n, C of ij is equal to A of ij plus B of ij. So its complexity is equal to n square. So what will be the correct answer? The correct answer will be Tower of Hanai, exponential time, that is 2n, that is p is to 3. After that, binary search is log n, that is q is 4. Q is 4. Then third, heap sort, that is R is equal to 2. R is equal to 2. And fourth one is addition of two matrices, that is S is equal to n square. Hence the answer is this: P4, Q3, R2 and S1. See the answer? This one is the correct answer. Next question. Consider the following function from the positive integer to the real number. So the functions are 10, after that n log 2n, then 100 divided by n. It is not correctly visible. I'll show you the directly website so that it is correctly visible. This is the question. Consider the following root of n log n to the base 2 and 10 divided by n. The correct arrangement of the above function in the increasing order of asymptotic complexity is C. 10 is constant. After that there is root n. After that there is n. After that there is log to the base log n to the base 2. And last one is 100 divided by n. So what will be the lowest complexity, to which function will be having the lowest complexity? For the value of n, for a very large value of n, your complexity of the function will be 10 will be constant, whereas if I consider the value of n as equal to 50, if I consider the value of n is equal to 50, so 100 by n will be 2. So it will have the lowest complexity. Hence, first element will be 100 by 2. What next? What next will be? Next element will be 10. After that, there will be root n. After that, there will be, after that, there will be log n to the base 2, and last it will be n. So the answer of the question will be equal to 100 by n, then 100, then log n to the base 2, then root n, then n. This is the answer. So these are the sum of the question. After this asymptotic notation, there comes a recursive equation, and for those recursive equation, we have to solve the asymptotic notation. There some problems are given to you, and you have to find out the functions and solution to them. So it is the another part. It is a separate lecture for the recursive equation. This is all from my side. If you people have any doubt, you are free to ask me.